You have to make these sacrifices. You don't have a choice. And if you think you have a choice, you are wrong. They come in here expecting a certain thing, and if you don't provide it, it's very disheartening to them. There's a difference between constructive criticism and just being like a jerk off. And 1% of you are absolute scumbags. You know, somebody was like, you can make the same working as a cashier at McDonald's. So what we're doing now is we might get rid of video games.
This is my friend Mark. Last year I interviewed him about his first year owning a video game store, and he was brutally honest with me.
They hated me for that. They talk trash, they kick the hornet's nest, they try to start fights. I never stop. I'm 7 days a week. I have a 1-year-old and a 6-year-old. I don't think I'm gonna see my daughter walk for the first time.
For some reason, 3 million people decided to watch that video. So I'm here 1 year later to follow up with Mark on what it's really like to grow a video game store, find out the honest reasons why he's changing his business model, and ask him about the fallout of his business going viral on YouTube. Well, Mark, thank you so much for having me out, man.
Dude, it's so great to see you again.
How does it feel to be internet famous?
Oh man, it felt great. It felt so good.
Why do I sense a little sarcasm in your voice there?
Your comment section is mean, and I read all of them. You guys are mean. No, I'm just kidding.
Dude,
Some of
I
them
saw
are really nice.
you were in the trenches there responding to everyone. I want to ask you about like the psychological kind of toll that going viral takes on you.
Oh yeah.
Also talk about how much money you're making this year, how you're pivoting your business. As we do that, you mind like kind of giving me a little store tour here?
Heck yeah. All right, so a few things have changed since you were here last. We have this big console wall now that we're working on.
This is beautiful, by the way.
Yeah, this is my baby. It really just comes down to making sure everything looks as awesome as humanly possible.
Yeah. Tell me, as we're exploring back here, about the pivot that you decided to make this year.
Well, video games were doing exceedingly well after the video decided to go viral. We were getting calls from people all over the country. Hey, I'd love to sell you my collection. I'd love to sell you my collection. I'd love to sell you my collection.
Wow.
So we started buying a ton of stuff. And of course, that correlates into a lot more sales. So we started having an overflow of money, needed to put it somewhere. And the other half of our business was Pokemon.
Okay.
We started getting a lot more well-known for Pokemon. And because of the business strategy that we always implement, it's kind of follow the money, we decided that we were going to go a little harder into Pokemon. So instead of it being like 30% Pokemon and 70% video games.
Speaking of Pokemon, by the way.
Oh yeah.
You have an entire Pokemon cabinet. This is really impressive.
Yes, she's nice and pretty. Pokemon, when we first started, was about 10% of the business. Yeah. It started to get bigger, became like 20% of the business, became 30%
You're talking
of
cards.
Exactly, Pokemon cards. And this is my wall of Pokemon that were very steadily increasing in size.
Okay.
Reason being, the video kind of gave us a little bit of a notoriety for something we didn't expect. And that was locals saying, we didn't know you did Pokemon. So they thought we were just a video game place.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden they're seeing all this.
Well, and at the time it was not a huge chunk of the business.
No, it was probably about 25% of the business. Pokemon went from 30% of the business to 50% of the business. We noticed that was paying massive dividends.
Interesting.
So what we did is we picked up a few new cabinets. We got these nice lit up ones.
Yeah, these are gorgeous.
We are facilitating them with slabs and very expensive raw cards. You'll see there's a top shelf of nothing but Charizards, pretty much.
Holy cow.
And these are the bread and butter of all Pokemon stores. Everybody loves Charizard, so we have a ton of them over here. So now Pokemon, instead of being 50% of the business, is more like 75% of the business. We would have great days in video game sales around $1,000, $1,500 a day. Pokemon sales have been like $3,000 to $5,000 a day. That's why we're having so much trouble keeping it in stock.
And so you're faced with a really interesting decision now of like, do you stay in the lane of the thing that you started with that's been good? It's a good industry. It hasn't given you any issues.
No.
Or do you pour gas on the thing that's kind of exploding?
So Pokemon right now is in a very interesting place because the next year is nothing but banger sets. We're looking at incredibly, incredibly lucrative sets coming out in the next year. So what we did was we went to shows and we started bringing exorbitant amounts of money. Buying from people, from other vendors, buying more sealed product, buying more singles, buying more slabs. And we noticed that the money in it was just so exceedingly incredible that it became almost a detriment to spend money on video games, because that's money we could have been spending on Pokemon cards.
Yeah.
So what we're doing now is we might get rid of video games.
Holy cow. Okay. So I need to ask you more about this pivot and that decision-making process in a business sense, and also about the profit that you're making on these different kinds of inventory. Well, now that you are pivoting a little bit more into Pokemon, less into video games, I do have to ask, are there any games that you're looking to maybe clear out a little bit to your friend who's still in the clumsy video game space?
So there is a lot that we're looking to move right now
Okay.
due to this move that we're making. We have a big show coming up this weekend, so any extra capital is just incredible.
I know we're at like 23 for these.
Sure.
25 for Fortune Street. Is that close enough?
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Okay, got a couple copies of those. Folks, I would be remiss right now if I didn't say, if you've got Pokemon cards, definitely sell them to Mark. If you've got video games that you want to sell, please sell them to us at myquickflips.com. You can get fair, transparent pricing. You don't have to worry about getting ripped off at GameStop. Don't have to worry about listing or photos or individual games on eBay and then getting scammed by a buyer. You can get fast, fair cash for your video games by selling them to us on myquickflips.com. We'll get you paid out within a few business days of when they arrive, and we love doing business with viewers. You can look up your games on there right now, myquickflips.com. Appreciate you letting me plug that here.
Love to see it.
These, I think we're at 25 a piece.
Sure.
As I'm going through these a little bit more and just kind of making piles, I'll shoot you all the offers later, but talk to me about how your overall revenue has changed since last year and how much of that is now cards versus video games.
Yeah, so in terms of video games, we've doubled in sales. So last year was about a $250,000. Now we're closing in on 500,000. The video, of course, had a lot to do with it. It just, the first few months were out of this world in terms of business, nothing like I'd ever seen before. And then Pokemon cards, just to give you an example, in the last 2 months, Pokemon cards on our newly moving in on them deeper plan have done over $100,000. So we're looking at around...
In just the last few months.
Yeah. In the last 3 weeks, we've done $74,000 since we've leaned into it more and came back from the show. From 11/18 until now, we're at about $75,000.
Which, for anyone who doesn't remember, that was close to your whole profit from last year.
Yeah. The last year was around 75 from the store, not from all the other extracurricular things we did. For those of you out there that were like, this man doesn't make any money, jerks.
Did that hurt your feelings a little bit?
Yeah, because nobody asked. They were like, oh, does he do conventions or does he do Facebook groups or does he do whatnot? It was like, no, this guy is a scumbag that makes no money. Pokemon in the last few weeks, there's way more conventions, there's way more shows, they're way more centralized to Florida and Georgia as well. So Pokemon is a lot easier to make money with. So literally in the last, almost a month, we've pushed almost $75,000, and that's not including all the buys that we've made and the fact that we're probably pushing about $50,000 to $60,000 in inventory right now.
Oh my gosh. Is there any part of you, I'm curious, that as this brush fire is exploding of Pokemon cards in your business, is there any part of you that's a little bit worried because the Pokemon card market right now is kind of in a frenzy, right?
Yeah, it's booming.
It's booming. It's, some people might say, in a bubble, but whatever, it's on the incline. Is there any part of you that's worried, okay, I might pivot into Pokemon and then it goes into a decline? Then what do I do? And by that point, I've sold a lot of my video games, most of my store maybe, or all of my store is Pokemon. Is that a fear in your mind?
For right now, no. Just because, like I said earlier, the amount of good sets coming out is so astronomical that the next year and a half is basically set in stone as going to be just absolute bangers. Now everything is starting to just lump into one big category of a very, very big next year and a half for Pokemon. So right now, I don't want to say that it has a protective bubble around it, but it is entirely probable that at least the next year and a half to 2 years, the game is going to continue the boom and the roller coaster going up the hill.
Talk to me about the other advantages of Pokemon cards versus video games, because there are parts of that market that I'm very envious of.
Yeah, one, it's the size and it's the ability to travel with them a lot more easily. We did a couple conventions in October and November where we had to drive 90 hours in 4 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
That was to go to Arkansas, Texas, the Panhandle. So it was a lot of driving. Where we got with that with Pokemon cards is we realized we could just take a big Goliath case. That's a wheelie case for those of you that aren't familiar. We can take those on an airplane and just check it in as a carry-on. So we're paying $50 essentially to fly to Georgia, and it takes 2 hours instead of driving to Texas and it taking 17 hours.
And how much inventory did you say you can get in one of those wheelie bags?
In the Pokemon world, you could easily bring $100,000 in just one, not small case, but one reasonably sized carry-on case.
Just for reference, most of the vendors that I'll talk to at any given video game convention that are loading up full vans or box trucks,
U-Hauls.
or who knows, yeah, U-Hauls, like a great weekend for them might be like 15 or 20K.
Yeah.
If they're, and you know, maybe they're selling like 30% of their inventory or something like that. So
Correct.
on the high end with a whole truck, you're maybe getting 60, or for the highest end ones, maybe $100,000 worth of inventory. But for Pokemon, it's one bag.
Yeah, we at the last show we did in West Palm Beach, we sold probably around 15,000. That was with a stringent amount of inventory, nothing close to what we have now.
Oh my gosh.
And we were able to buy over $30,000 in cards to bring back to the store, which the next day we came back on Monday, we sold $20,000 of them. And that's not an exaggeration.
Are you
We had
kidding
multiple whales. We posted them on Facebook. And this is not a joke. Within 10 minutes of posting them on Facebook, the doors busted down with people saying that they really, really, really wanted to get what we were showing.
You said you had multiple whales. What does that mean?
Whales are people that will come in and just spend a ton of money. You might have seen them in stores, the guys that go in and spend like $500 on video games all at once. Well, the whale in this Pokemon world is significantly larger than one in the video game world.
Okay.
They will come in and spend thousands of dollars at a time, and that's normal to them. And they pay cash.
Do you mind if I ask, like, in aggregate, what do you expect to profit this year in your business?
The profits on Pokemon cards are anywhere from between 65% and 30%. Usually 30% on the super high-end stuff because your margins are really, really good on them. But a lot, smaller payouts on the cards that are like $1.
So before we get symbolically completely out of the video game section here and into Pokemon, I've got to ask, what do you think about, like, because one of the ways that I hope we start doing more business on our end is with video game store owners like you. Do you think there's any potential, because I'd love for Quick Flips to be a tool for video game store owners to basically not have to turn anything down.
Yeah.
Right? Like everything that comes through the door, you have essentially a floor price that or a price that you can get on this game this week.
Right.
So, maybe if you even already have 5 copies of Twisted Metal 3, normally you would turn that down, but because we're paying, 15, you can offer 10 and then just, or 7 or 5 or whatever you want, and that person doesn't have to go away empty-handed. Is it reasonable to hope for that, or does that actually work for game store owners?
I think it's going to work in a couple different ways. Like, we do so much volume right now. Over in the Wii section, there's about 6 or 7 copies of Mario Kart.
Okay.
We have more than that.
Yeah.
But we can pay $15, $17 on them, and Quick Flips is buying them for $23, $25, whatever they're buying it for.
Yeah.
30
this month.
Yeah, I mean, I literally sell them, folks, for $35.
Yeah.
So if I can buy them for $20 and make a $15 profit off Quick Flips, there's no reason not to do that. But I think most normal stores are going to really, really love this program, especially when in one of your videos, you talked about how we're purchasing PlayStation games now.
Yeah.
So now there's a bigger market for them to start moving stuff. There's more incentive to them to start moving things to Quick Flips because money is king. And you don't always have to maximize your profits. That's the thing that most people in this industry kind of have trouble with, that if you have a $50 game and I offer you $45 for it, that $5 is a really big deal to you. But the ones that know that things move at the speed of money, they really want that quick $15, $16 profit, because it's going to open up buying more Mario Karts, and it's going to open that up to selling you more Mario Karts, which is a constant influx of more and more money.
Yeah, that's one philosophy that we definitely have in common, is like, I would so much rather get less than 100% of the money, right? 90% or 80% of the money that I theoretically could, if I can move things instantly.
Yes.
And that's kind of what it's built around, is like other people that have that philosophy. But one of the traits that I respect most about you is just your willingness to be candid, right? And like honest about the real sacrifices that this business takes. So I want to ask you more about that. I heard you maybe have some cards for us to sort over there as we're doing it.
It never stops.
Get a little bit more comfy over there.
Never stops, folks.
All right, so Mark, now that you're putting me to work here, sorting your cards.
Somebody has to.
Talk to me about, like, when you got all of those comments on your business from strangers on the internet, and you were responding to like almost all 7,000 of them. What was that like for you psychologically? So
to be fair, I only reacted to the bad ones. Psychologically, it didn't really do much. I come from a world of Magic the Gathering where I was a writer for a long time.
Right.
And I got tons of negative comments, and it's like ingrained in me to respond to those comments, because I like making stupid people look even more stupid. You know, the people that are like, oh, he's a bad father. It's like, well, you don't see all the time I spend with my children when I'm home.
Yeah.
And the people that were like, well, you're poor. And I'm like, well, you don't see all the extra avenues in which I make money.
Sure.
You know, we were just talking about the store last time. So psychologically, you know, my wife was like, Mark, can you please stop? And I was like, I won't stop. You know, because these people, like, I call them automatons. Like, you're not a real person if your first reaction to somebody is to be negative. Like, there's a difference between constructive criticism and just being like a jerk off. When I had free time, you know, every couple of days, I would just like look up the video and just to see, you know, who had said what. And there were like so many, like probably 800 of those comments were like super positive and love this, you know, thank you for this, just popped up in the algorithm, but I watched the whole thing. It was super cool. And we had lots of fun with it because it was a great time making that video, and the fallout from it was incredibly positive. But the people that were just overtly negative, like, I just want you to know, like, you're really sad. Like, at the end of the day, you're really sad. Like, they absolutely have no quarrel saying just the meanest, rudest thing. Like, somebody said, like, I hope your time with your children is both unfulfilling and unhappy.
Oh my God.
Like, who are you? Like,
well, and there were a lot of people that were just like, you know, throwing their opinions out there about like, you know, you're spending way too much time on this business and not making enough money, or you're sacrificing too much, not being a good father by not being with your kids, or like making jabs at your appearance. Yeah,
they were like, oh, you look fat, you're old, you have gray in your beard, you look really rough. Somebody said you look really rough for 38.
Oh, jeez.
You know, like...
So, okay, but like, at least for me, at the end of the day, sometimes some of those things do stick with me. Like, by the way, hairline check. I'm not doing great with the hairline.
Hairline check.
Okay, I feel a little bit better.
Why do you think we're wearing hats?
But like, at the end of the day, some of that stuff for me does stick. Was there anything for you that like stuck a little bit more than you'd like to admit?
To be honest, I know it's shallow, but just the money thing. You know, like, I know that I'm a great father. I love my children more than life itself. The money thing really got to me because, and I'll just give you guys the breakdown. We did about almost $75,000 in 4 conventions that we did last year. We did about $45,000 on Whatnot. And then extra money on like Facebook groups and private deals with private dealers and things like, you know, like selling to you or, you know, somebody along the same lines.
Yeah.
So we actually made I made over 6 figures last year, but we were only talking about the store.
Yeah.
And to me, that's just like, they were trying to like demean me. Like, all your hard work, you know, somebody was like, you can make the same working as a cashier at McDonald's. Like, and there's absolutely no shade at anybody that works at McDonald's. They work harder than almost anybody.
Right.
It was the negative things like that were just like, oh, you're really wasting your time doing this because you're not making any money. And I work 40 hours a week and I make twice as much money as you. It's like, if you have to say it, like, either no, you don't, or you're a braggart and nobody likes you in real life.
So you had also kind of an interesting perspective because you got to not only read 7,000 comments about your business, but also you had a lot of people coming into the store.
Yeah.
Right?
Not a single person was negative.
Interesting. So there was a big difference between like what you heard online versus what the real flesh and blood folks were telling you.
Oh, everybody that came in, I had people coming in from Orlando, Miami, Jacksonville, Tampa, and they were like, we have to get to this store. Like, it looks so cool. Not a single person came in and was like, yeah, man, I think you're fat. You know, there was no negativity. It was all incredible amounts of positivity. It was so much fun having these people come in, and, you know, like, I know I try to have a lot of fun with people, but like, I would get a little bashful because I'm just like, okay, you know, like, that's great. Like, hi, I'm Mark. Nice to meet you. Like, they would treat me like I was like somebody special, and like, I'm not. I'm absolutely average and like probably below average according to your comment section. But it was really humbling, like, to see that many people that love what you're doing and love what I'm doing, and that would come in for just video games and Pokemon cards. And sometimes people just came in, they're like, I just wanted to talk to you. I had people calling me from different states who were like, hey man, like, just wanted to say, like, great video, got your number off Google, wanted to tell you keep going. Like,
oh my gosh,
you're awesome. And like, this was really, really cool stuff.
You also had the interesting perspective of, you talked to a few prospective game store owners after that video. Some of them were like, I'm not gonna do it anymore. Some of them were like, you know what, I think I could do it. So what were those conversations like?
They were very interesting. A lot of these folks, they came to me with the wrong idea. You know, they were like, this sounds like it's gonna be so much fun. And I'd be like, well, how much money are you starting with? And they'd be like, that's a good question. And I'd be like, well, I started with 25,000 and that certainly wasn't enough.
Yeah.
So what are you going to start with? We'll figure that out when we get to that stage in the game. So those were the folks where I was kind of like, well, maybe this isn't the best thing to do for you because you have a tech job and this isn't the smartest situation for you to put yourself in.
Yeah.
But then there were some people that were like, man, I really think I could do this. Like, I've got money ready.
Opening a store.
Yeah, like
I could open a video game store.
Exactly. Like, I've got money. I've got the drive. I've been selling at the flea market for years. I've got some inventory. Like, do you think I can do this? And those were the people I was like, go for it.
Yeah.
Tackle it. Attack it. But the people that also called me up that were like, I don't think I want to do this anymore. I would actually ask them, like, what about this makes you think that you can't do it? Because the video, even though it was meant to tell you the truth, which I think was a big selling point on it, was how honest I wanted to be with people.
Yeah.
I think a big part of it was they were scared by how much work you have to do. I always, I called it in the last video and I'll call it again. It's not a secret clubhouse. Like, this isn't where you and your friends come and hang out and just mess around and, haha, it's going to be a party. We're going to eat pizza every day. Like, it's not. It's a really tough business.
Yeah.
And it involves a lot of travel, a lot of sacrifice, a lot of heartache. But we're at the stage now where we're really starting to see the positive effects and the money rolling in big time. If you can get to that stage, like, totally, you just have to suffer. You can't know peace until you felt suffering. The first few, months, years, it's going to be really, really scary. Like, just be ready to be afraid. But if you can weather that storm, best job ever.
So one thing that you were really honest about last time is the sacrifices that you had to make to get here, to get to this point of the money's coming in and things feel a little bit more safe. What are some of the sacrifices that you've had to make this last year even to continue to get to this level?
Pokemon traveling is a lot different than video game traveling. There are shows everywhere, and getting to the shows is really easy. Like we were mentioning earlier, it's just one carry-on suitcase can keep $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 in cards.
Yeah.
So the travel, especially next year, 2025, is going to be Q1 and Q2 are going to be insane for us. We're probably going to be doing 15 to 20 shows next year. That travel is something we definitely know is going to be a little bit tough on our family. But giving them that security, there's nothing like knowing that you can get a bunch of presents under the Christmas tree for your son, and he's going to go wild, and my daughter's going to, probably dance in the wrapping paper, and it's going to be super cute. I know that's shallow and materialistic, but to be able to provide for your family and go out to nice dinners with your wife and just have these beautiful moments that can't really exist outside of, unfortunately, like not having the means to do them. When it comes to the freedom you feel of financial freedom, it's just the biggest weight off your back, because that's what causes people the most stress in this country is financial difficulties. And when you start to hit that stride of freedom, I'll tell you folks, it is a weight off your shoulders like you can't believe. And it took me years and years and years to get here.
So you've talked about the value of being fearless as a business owner. Did that factor in at all, like, to how willing you were to start to pivot the business and like try this new revenue model?
Yeah, I mean, my first starts during my time serving in about 2020 were with Magic cards. And Magic cards were doing really well, but video games were doing better. So we decided, okay, it's time to get into video games. And then after that, now we're starting to see that Pokemon cards are doing exceedingly well. It might be time to get into Pokemon cards. It's about just saying, follow the money. And a lot of people might comment like, oh, I guess you never had a passion for video games to begin with, or Magic to begin with. And that's simply not true. I love video games, and video games have given me more in my life than almost any type of work that I've ever done. So I think just going forward with what makes you the money is the best policy, because even though I love video games, I mean, I grew up on video games. We both did. We grew up, playing GameCube and PlayStation 2 for me. And those were some of the best memories I've ever had. And that's why getting into video games has been so fulfilling. But you know what else is fulfilling? Looking at a big ass bank account. That's pretty fulfilling too.
It sure is. I was talking to someone earlier this week about their business. They're split between video games and vintage kitchen appliance parts. They'll go and find, like old KitchenAids and things like that at Goodwill, part them out and sell them on eBay. And my advice was like, man, lean harder into that. There's probably so much less competition.
That's very
in
niche.
that
Yeah,
space.
you probably make $1 million doing that.
Yeah, they'll buy like a broken Cuisinart and parted out for over 300 bucks. Yeah, so as much as I love video games and I'm a video game guy, and I'm very much a believer in like abundance mindset, like there is room for everyone, like everyone can have a slice of the pie. I was like, if you have an opportunity to play in an industry that has a lot less competition, like go for it. So let me ask, would you ever get out of video games entirely?
Yeah, it's something we're looking for right now. We're collecting a lot of data to see if that is the correct play to make. I personally would like to keep certain aspects of it, but I would definitely scale back on a very large portion of it because, as you can see, my store looks great. But remember, folks, that's like 100K in inventory just hanging out on your walls. There's tons of games that probably won't sell for a very long time. All the bread and butter easily sells. But when it comes to all these cool box consoles and obscure games that are worth hundreds of dollars, they don't have the right audience. So you're leaving a ton of money on the table by doing that. Where something like Pokemon, the sell-through rate on them is obscene. I can't keep enough cards in my value box. I can't keep enough cards in my binders. I can't keep enough cards in my showcases. It's really, really interesting to see the difference between an industry that is incredibly popular and an industry that's incredibly popular but is on a huge upswing.
Yeah, that's fascinating, because one thing that I talk about a lot is opportunity cost. And what you're essentially saying is like, there's opportunity cost of like these stacks of Wii games back here. They're just sitting in this case.
Right.
Like this could be moving this week, but instead, because like your store crowd is growing more and more to the Pokemon side, like this could all be liquidated, turned into money, which is turned into Pokemon cards, which might gain you double or triple the sales in a given year.
It would. I mean, our bad days on Pokemon now are about $2,000. Those are our bad days. Our worst day that we've had was $800. And of course, that was supplemented by video games. So you have these days where video games pull a lot of their weight. And that's when you start to say to yourself, like, am I making the right decision? But then you start to look at the big picture and you say, well, what if I carried binders? What if I carried card holders? What if I carried Pokemon clothing or plushies? Would that bring in a different audience? So
speaking of plushies.
Oh, well, the real star of the show might be this Squirtle. So a lot of folks in the comment section said it's really hard to take a man seriously holding a Squirtle. And guess what? It was for laughs. And guess what? I'm doing it again because you made fun of it. So now Squirtle's back. People have tried to buy the Squirtle too. They've been like, is that the Squirtle from the video? And I was like, yeah. And they were like, how much for it? Guess what? Not for sale.
$1,000. You know $1,000 would take it.
I mean, if you're offering...
What would you actually sell?
I wouldn't.
Come on. I'll give you $300 cash right now. You know you'd take that.
I would take that. So
now that we're over a half hour in to this interview, I want to get into some of the nitty-gritty business questions, because the people that are left are probably here for that. We're in Squirtle mode right now. Talk to me about how, like, you're about to make all of these data-based decisions, right? Changes to your businesses. How do you know, like, when you're being too aggressive?
When the money runs out. I mean, it sounds silly, but when you start noticing that you're buying more than you're selling, that's when it's probably time to scale it back a little bit.
Yeah.
We spend a lot of money on sealed product. We pay really, really well for cards. We, at our last convention, had a line of about 15 people deep, and we're nobodies in this business yet. But word must have got around that, hey, those guys pay really well for stuff. And we were so busy for all of Saturday night and all of Sunday. People were coming up to us with multi-$1,000 collections, and we were buying them all. If that was starting to dry up, we would have to reevaluate what our attack strategy is with Pokemon. Do we do more Whatnot? Do we do more eBay-based sales? Do we do more Facebook private group sales? You just have to roll with the punches and move with where the money is starting to travel to.
Okay, agree or disagree? As someone who has made your share of sacrifices in business, do you agree with this statement that the amount of success you're likely to have in business is largely a function of how much you're willing to sacrifice to get there?
I agree. I think the most successful people in life are the people that are willing to make the big decisions, the hard decisions. You don't really fall into it. You never really get success unless you attack it and go for it. It's just a part of Americana. It's part of getting the American dream is doing the work. And that's been my biggest saying since I've got into this business. I have shirts that say, do the work. If you're able to put in the hours and put in the work, eventually you will start to see the rewards of it. You can't just have it happen to you and it's magical, and you can't get depressed when it's not happening. You have to evaluate, am I doing enough work for this? Am I putting enough hours? Am I giving it enough of a go? You have to make these sacrifices. You don't have a choice. And if you think you have a choice, you are wrong.
Do you believe in work-life balance?
That's a really hard question. I think in the infant stages, you have to tilt your life more towards work. I know it's tough to say that you have to put an imbalance into your life to be successful, but eventually the pendulum starts to swing the other way. When you reach that level of success, then all of a sudden you can spend more time with your family. You can take days off. You can pay employees. I have an employee now that I pay, and I'm able to take a little bit of extra time off. You can start to reap those benefits, and now all of a sudden your life goes from 75% work to 25% family. Now it's 60% work and 40% family, or 50-50.
Yeah.
Eventually even bigger chunks, are available for your family and your friends.
Yeah, one thing that I always remind myself of is I believe in work-life balance just over a longer time horizon than a lot of people do, right? Like a lot of people look at it in terms of day to day or week to week, how many hours are you putting in?
Right.
But what folks might not realize is, like, if you're willing to commit to doing the same business for a really long time, you can start to see non-linear returns on the amount of effort that you're putting in. You can get the same results for way less work, but it takes a lot of work up front.
Yeah, we're projecting a potential of $1 million next year.
Jeez.
In just Pokemon. Video games, if they're there, will supplement that income. But in the neighborhood of doing $80,000 a month, if that trend continues, which it has been going for the last month, and our data in the beginning of December is proving that as well, we could potentially do between $800,000 and $1 million in business next year.
Wow. So I've been asking a lot about, like, okay, are you sure about making this pivot? Like, have you considered this? But let me go the other way and ask, because this last couple of years, I've learned a ton about the value of focus, right? Like, I've cut out, we used to sell on 2 or 3 platforms. Now we only sell on 1. I used to do 4 videos a month. Now I only do 2. I used to do a ton of sponsorships. Now I don't really do that anymore. And by cutting out more stuff, our main thing has gotten better.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, like, what would happen if you sped up the timeline for purging all the video game stuff? Do you think it's likely you would see a similar exponential return on that amount of focus just going to Pokemon?
I think you have to wean your audience off of video games. I think when people come in to buy them, you have to tell them, like, hey, the next few months, we're going to start scaling back on video games, and eventually you're going to come in here and there's not going to be any. I'll have to make announcements on Facebook that, hey, we're deciding to go into this direction. I would love to speed up the timeline, but unfortunately, I have a large audience that buys video games, and I want to do the right thing by them. I don't just want to say, like, one day when they come in, be like, sorry, they're gone.
Yeah.
With no warning, no announcements, no anything that is going to let them know that, hey, this might not be the store for you anymore if all you want is video games. I am one of those people that I like instant gratification, and I really wish I could speed up that timeline, but there are still thousands of dollars a month being made by video games. I really want to make sure that that money is still brought in, but eventually, if the change does come, which is looking like it will, that those people are taken care of.
That's so good. All right, Mark, so somebody comes up to you tomorrow, young person who says, I love Pokemon cards, I want to get into the business. Is this something you honestly recommend?
So it is incredibly difficult money-wise to get into this business. Like I've talked about, we've made between $75,000 and $80,000 in the last month. We spent $70,000. So while the profit is there, and you're making, in a month about $10,000 profit, you're still looking at having to spend an exorbitant amount of money.
Right.
So if you're not going into this with a very large bankroll, you're in trouble. One of the things that you might notice about video games is you can buy a big stack of video games for $300-400. With Pokemon, a reasonable Pokemon collection, you're going to be paying probably $700 to $1,000 for some good stuff.
Yeah.
The kind of stuff you want to fill your shelves and to fill your binders and to fill your boxes. What you're looking at with Pokemon is you need a great sum of money to start, or you are going to be in big trouble very quickly.
If someone's just looking to, like, dip their toes in and start out just like on a hobby or a part-time basis, how much money would they reasonably need to have?
It just depends on how hard you want to go. If you have a few $1,000s, you could very easily get yourself involved. If you have like $100, then, probably going to run into some trouble. This isn't one of those things where you could do the, the $10,000 to $10,000 challenge. Like, could you? I'm sure you could, but it's going to take exponentially longer because you can't really go to garage sales and find $500 in Pokemon cards and buy them for $12. Like, that's just not going to happen. But if you want to get into a hobby, it's one of the best hobbies in the world. It's so much fun. The people are so much fun. We do trade nights every first Friday of the month.
So those trade nights are really interesting to me because those are nights that you host where not only collectors will come in and trade with each other, but also other vendors will come in and try to sell Pokemon cards within your space that you're paying for. So talk to me about the philosophy that would make you say, this is a good idea to have people who are competing with me out there in my space to sell the exact same kind of inventory that you are.
Yeah, we invite them to do that once a month. I mean, obviously they can't come in any day of the week and do it, but we invite them to do that once a month. There's some people that have stuff that I don't have, and that's okay. We have some people that they carry Japanese only product. Well, we made friends with these people, and now we carry the Japanese product. They have distributorship from Japan, and they're getting in awesome product. So now we're able to carry that product.
One of the big things that we say on this channel is collaborate, don't compete. Like in the reselling world, there is so much opportunity for cooperation to make way more money, and it sounds like you're really embodying that well. I wanted to ask you also, last year, one of the competitive advantages that you mentioned having is that you pay more for the inventory you get in and try to sell for less than your competition does.
Yeah.
Is that still an edge that you have over your competitors in the Pokemon world?
So Pokemon's a little bit different than video games. It's very percentage based. Where video games are, percentage based as well, you do have to buy the better stuff for more, and you can buy the bad stuff for less. You can buy dollar cards for 20 or 30 cents, and the people are happy because honestly that's all they're worth. But you throw them in a box and tack $1 onto them, you'll end up selling them. So it's very, very much known that TCG Player is a commodity that everybody uses.
Agree or disagree? The bar for excellence in business is really not that high.
That's another hard question. The bar for excellence, real obtainable excellence, is very high. It's like we talked about last year. Customer service has to be on point. Your philosophy has to be on point. Your pricing has to be on point. Everything needs to be done in an exceptional way that breeds excellence. There is no such thing as subpar excellence. You never hear it said that way, like, oh, they're excellent, but not really that excellent. Like, it's just kind of silly at that point. So I would disagree that the bar for excellence is very low.
What is your end game with all of this?
It's still retire by 50. I have friends that are in this business that have retired or will be retiring very shortly, because Pokemon offers you an entire world of money that you don't see with video games. I'm very, very blessed to have great connections in the Pokemon card world, and they are all telling me the same thing. Hey, put your money away, get your money invested, and then just coast and enjoy your life. Stay in the business if you want. It's a fun business.
Appreciate you having me, man. Thank you so much.
You will shake the Squirtle's hand today.
I'm honored. And if you want to see the last conversation that Mark and I had in this very same store, check out this video right down here. It was one for the record books.